So today's webinar is one that's of particular interest and a particular passion for me because I very much focus a lot of my efforts in the industry on member loyalty and how loyal members can have an impact and a positive impact on a club's success, especially in terms of retaining members over the long term. So today we talk about, can a member's net promoter score predict cancellation? Just to start, I just want to review a quick agenda for you. First of all, we will review the net promoter score. I'm sure many of you, because you're on this webinar, understand what the net promoter score is and its value to the industry, but I'll just reinforce that. And then we also want to talk a little bit about how the Net Promoter Score compares to traditional surveys. Many of our facilities run traditional surveys, often many questions that focus on things like operations, marketing, sales, management, cleanliness, etc. We want to just focus on how do those traditional surveys differ from the Net Promoter Score survey. Then we're going to talk about the research that we did, and this particular research project was conducted specifically to track whether or not net promoter scores can predict whether or not a member is going to cancel. So really trying to connect the dots. We'll share our findings and conclusions, and I think you're going to find them to be very illuminating. And then we want to ask really three questions: why you should care, why you should act, and how you should act as a result of these findings. So let's move ahead. And for those of you who don't know who the retention people are, we are a UK-based company and part of a major software conglomerate called Jonas Software. We currently have offices around the world in the UK, US, Canada, and Australia. And our focus, and we are the only company that focuses 100% on retention research and customer experience management within the fitness industry. So we are fitness experts first, and we're research and customer experience managers as well. So we have a great deal to offer you. We provide software tools that integrate seamlessly with your membership system, and we currently work with over 1,000 facilities. And that means that we're monitoring at any given time through our research about 15 million active member records. And that's about the largest member database in the industry today. And we also have an enduring partnership with IHRSA, the International Health Racquet and Sports Club Association. And I know many of you are participating in the ongoing North America member loyalty study. Our product line is Engage CEM. It's Customer Experience Management, CEM. And we really have three objectives. We want to help you improve your member experience. We want to help you promote loyalty. And we want to have you increase your income by improving member retention and increasing referral. And we are connecting the dots, I mentioned that earlier, between these rather esoteric concepts like loyalty and really showing you how you can turn member loyalty into real revenue for your facility and enduring profits. So let's talk first about Net Promoter Score and one of the reasons why we're so passionate about it. Net Promoter Score it really is the ultimate measure of customer loyalty. And in fact, leading brands around the world like Apple, Amazon, Sephora, Zappos, Harley Davidson, USAA, all of these companies, Trader Joe's, all these companies utilize Net Promoter Score as a way to really gauge their customer loyalty. And it was developed a number of years ago by a fellow who we have a partnership with called Fred Reichelt. And he was a part of a major management consulting firm, Bain & Company, and a metrics firm called Satmetrics. And so through his research, he discovered that really loyalty surveys didn't get to the meat of the issue, and that is to really gauge exactly how a particular person felt at a particular time about a particular product or service. And so he really wanted to develop a concept or actually a program around building a survey that really consists only of one question and one question only. And that's what we call the ultimate question. And that is the Net Promoter Score survey, which I'll go into in depth in a moment. The origins are rather interesting. And by the way, you just saw two book titles, The Ultimate Question and The Ultimate Question 2.0 by Fred Reichelt. And then additionally, we have The Loyalty Effect by Fred Reichelt as well. And I would highly encourage you when you get an opportunity to grab these titles, give them a read. I think you're going to find them to be very, very fascinating and help you as fitness club operators understand the place that member loyalty has in your facility. So, as far as the origins of the Net Promoter Score are concerned, it's really focusing on one thing that really shifts the way businesses think about their mission. And what Fred Reichelt came out and said very controversially, is, your mission is not necessarily to produce profit. Your mission is to create value for your customer. And that's something that we grasp as the retention people and really apply to all of our customers around the world. But it's something that's very difficult to grasp when you're in the field, in the club, really fighting for every membership, fighting to retain every membership, and looking to improve your bottom line. So what we're trying to do here is give you an opportunity to really look above the weeds and really understand that, if your mission is to create value, then many, many good things, including revenue and profit, will follow. So creating value for that member is really the number one thing. Additionally, we want to prove that using the Net Promoter Score, because it can be very easy to see this as really just an exercise in gauging loyalty, but how does that loyalty connect to your ability to be successful in the businesses that you run? And so what we want to do is prove that it does work and it can have an effective impact on your business. And that's what we are doing right now. So here are the questions that we want you to ask yourself. How do you improve member loyalty? Many of you run very, very successful facilities, and you're constantly dealing with churn, with member attrition. Retention issues are really a number one problem in many clubs, and in fact, we've discovered that on average, that about 50% of all members leave a facility within the first 12 months. So even when you're doing it right to have a 50% return really isn't very acceptable. So how do we improve member loyalty? And then how does loyalty impact your business? How do we increase the loyalty? How do we have that loyalty impact retention? And how does that retention impact the financial success of your business? And here's Fred, and I think that this quote. And by the way, I will be happy to send each and every one of you a copy of these slides following the presentation. I'll give you my contact information, and this is a slide that I think might be one that's worthy of framing in your office, which says retention is not simply one more operating statistics. It's a central gauge that integrates all dimensions of a business and measures how well the firm is creating value for its customers. So retention creates value. Loyalty creates retention. You see the theme here. And then he goes on to say, with great boldness, it is the single indicator for measuring sustainable growth. It's not about the system of checks and balances, profits and loss. It's about really retaining members for the long term and creating value for those members. And then once you do that, everything else falls into place, including revenues and profits. Now, we all do surveys on an ongoing basis, and I think the tendency with a survey is assuming we only have a brief period of time to get a member's attention around a survey. We really want to stuff them with questions that we're really yearning for the answers for. So very often we'll do an exit questionnaire, asking them several questions as they leave the club, or ask them for comments. Many of us have comment boxes or an opportunity for providing comments on their website. We also ask people to really provide us both verbal and written feedback. But what are the problems about this standard customer feedback? Well, it tends to be very reactive, especially if you're asking someone specifically about the condition of your locker room. That immediately projects to that member that you recognize that there's a problem about the locker room, and that this is a really a forum for them to react to the issues that you're dealing with. It can often result too in frustration because sometimes problems can't quickly be solved. So, and I know when I answer a survey and someone asks me about how the condition of something, my immediate reaction is, will my response trigger a fix? Or will it simply frustrate me because someone's asking me my opinion, I give my opinion, and there's no action following that opinion? And also, with standard customer feedback, you typically get the people that have something just nagging at them. So when you give them the opportunity to feedback, that feedback can very often be negative. Traditional customer satisfaction surveys have a lot of pitfalls to them. Number one, they tend to be long and complex. Uh, I would uh, I would suggest that many of us, tend to ask too many questions within a survey about too many things. And again, those surveys can be very leading because the topics that you're asking about in the survey typically reflect those things that you're concerned about as an operator. And then when you get the results, how do you act upon those results? And that really becomes a big challenge because people, when they respond to a survey, they expect some kind of action, or first a reaction and then some action. And I alluded to the sampling bias. If you're asking them a lot of questions about your operations, or about your cleanliness, or about your fitness programs, or your Group X programs, that actually leads the responder to believe that those are areas that you have concerns about, and so it tends to bias their feedback. Additionally, when you think about people that stay and people that go, most people who leave your facility are not leaving because they are dissatisfied. They're leaving for many other reasons. Sometimes those reasons can be price, or they can be relocating. But typically, when people defect, they are satisfied with your facility. So you can't really get appreciable, actionable information from a survey, especially if you're doing like an exit survey, because people are going to be by and large satisfied. And if they're satisfied, that essentially compels us not to take action. And results of surveys don't really correlate with profits or growth. Um, we find that senior management does not take surveys seriously. I've presented survey results to senior management teams many, many times, and senior management tends to get bogged down not in the results, not in the data, but in the process by which the data was gathered. And so getting those results to compel action from a management level is often very, very difficult. And they're not audited. We find ourselves very free and easy with our surveying these days because we can sign up on SurveyMonkey and put together surveys for this, surveys for that. And we find ourselves really getting caught up in kind of survey madness that really doesn't provide us the feedback, the information, the learning that we need in order to move our businesses forward. Net Promoter Score, however, is a very different kind of survey because it's a survey that's meant to drive cultures, club cultures, business cultures, toward focusing on how do we maximize loyalty among our customers, among our members. And the Net Promoter Score survey, in its simplest form, is very easy to understand. We ask one question and one question only when we send out a Net Promoter Score survey, and that is quite simply on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend our club, our facility, our business to a friend or a colleague? And then we give folks the opportunity to rank us from that 0 to 10. But it's also a very harsh metric that Fred Reichelt and Bain and Company developed because it is designed to drive people toward that 9 and 10, those people that, according to NPS, are considered promoters. We really weight the survey toward the bottom end. So, in Net Promoter Score terms, anyone that rates you anywhere from a 0 to a 6, and chances are, if you've done surveys and someone gives you a 6, you feel that, well, that's kind of a middle of the road response, but it's not necessarily bad. According to Net Promoter Score, anyone who goes from a 0 to a 6 is considered a detractor. Additionally, anyone who goes from a 7 to an 8 is considered a fence sitter, someone who really has no strong opinion about your facility. 9s and 10s really are what we call the gold dust in your membership. And it's our goal through Net Promoter Score to move all of your members to this real pinnacle of loyalty, and that is called a promoter. When you have a majority of promoters within your facility, you really create a culture that adds value to your members, and then great things happen from a financial standpoint, from a profit and loss standpoint. So when we gauge Net Promoter Score, let's say we have 10 people respond to our survey, and out of those 10, 4 people give us a 9 or a 10. So 40% are promoters. Great result. And let's say 4 of those people gave us a 7 or an 8. So from 7 to 10, 80%. That feels like a great result, doesn't it? And then let's say that 2 people, or 20%, are actually detractors. They give us a 0 to a 6. But because this metric is not necessarily meant to simply take a snapshot, but to really drive a culture of loyalty in your facility, the way we gauge Net Promoter Score is we really count those people that are scoring us the most, that are detractors and promoters. So those who have negative opinions of us and those who have positive opinions of us. Fence sitters are, by definition, neutral. So when we gauge Net Promoter Score, we actually take the fence sitters and we throw them out, and we simply subtract the promoters from the detractors. So what initially looked like a very attractive result actually gives us a Net Promoter Score of 20. Now, by context and comparison, some of the best industries of the world do Net Promoter Score on an ongoing basis, and we participate in a research study annually that actually tracks the Net Promoter Scores of major industries. The best performing companies in the world, like Apple and Amazon and USAA, which is an insurance company, and Wegmans, which is a grocery chain, they consistently get Net Promoter Scores in the area of between high 60s and low 70%. So it's very difficult to get a Net Promoter Score that is 100%. Obviously, you would need to achieve 100% of promoters within your facility. And the real X factor here is, how do we get people that are passive, that really don't have a strong opinion, that simply take advantage of our products and services, but if we were to disappear tomorrow, they probably wouldn't mind. Or if someone were to ask them over coffee, can you recommend a health club? Chances are these fence sitters wouldn't have much of an opinion. So how do we get these folks, which really are the X factor in Net Promoter Scores, to move their scores up to a 9 or a 10? And then, of course, how do we mediate and remediate the issues that detractors have in order to move them from a detractor status to either a fence sitter or promoter? Along with the Net Promoter Score is an open ended response. So not only will they score us, but they'll tell us why. And by following up with detractors, understanding why they gave us the score that they gave us, giving them the care and feeding that they need, the objective really is, can we move them up the scale and ultimately turn them into promoters of our business? So that's in a nutshell what Net Promoter Score is. And it's really got two ranges. Either you are mostly promoters, and that can really begin to nibble at 100%. Although, as I said, there are really no companies that achieve 100% Net Promoter Score. But we have seen Net Promoter Scores that actually uh, uh, start to dwell down at the bottom near minus 100%, which means you have virtually 100% of detractors in your facilities. So most people are somewhere in the middle. And what we do is we work with clubs to move that Net Promoter Score up. You know, there are warning signs that we've discovered within clubs that allow us to understand when a customer, when a member is close to leaving your facility, is close to quitting. Uh, and I think the easiest way uh, to track whether a customer is beginning to move away from your club is really look at their visits. Visit frequency is a huge factor. It's a factor that we consider very strongly when we track customer trends. And so, as a customer goes from frequent visits, and we see the benchmark, quite frankly, as 2 visits or more per week, really helps to identify whether or not a member is going to stay longer. When that visit frequency goes below 2, and then ultimately goes down to no visits, so they become part of that big paradox that we deal with day in and day out, which is called that sleeping giant, that person that pays us their dues every month but doesn't attend the facility. Ultimately, that's a recipe for cancellation. And so the visiting, as their visits begin to wane, they that's really a early warning sign. As they go to no visits, as their frequency drops off completely, that's a late warning sign. And then, of course, when they cancel, it's too late. But I guess the big question is there any way to really anticipate a pre-warning? And that's where the Net Promoter Score can really pay some great dividends to you, because we're beginning to see through our research, and we've done a research study that I'm going to give you the results of in a moment, that really do show that a Net Promoter Score, essentially a negative one, can actually be an early predictor of whether or not a member is going to cancel. So how they feel about you today might dictate how long they're going to stay with you over the next weeks or months. So we did a sampling and a study of about 20,000 members from a variety of clubs, and we're continuing to do this study. We'll be doing it again in the U.S. and in Canada. Um, and these are folks that joined between January 2009 and March 2013. And we discovered in this survey, on aggregate, we had about 3,400 people cancel. So about 3,400 people canceled of the 19,000 during 12 months that followed the completion of their Net Promoter Score survey. So in a nutshell, they complete the survey, and then within 12 months, about 3,400 of them canceled. And the question that we ask ourselves as researchers is, does what they gave us, the score they gave us on the NPS survey, help to predict whether or not they're going to cancel? And that's what I'd like to dig into with you now. What we discovered is, of these members, we had 18% detractors, so these are people that are 0 to 6. We had 29% passives, so clearly 1/3 of these members really had no opinion one way or the other about their facility. And then 53%, or better than half, are promoters. These are folks that feel very strongly about the facility. We took a look at the responses by age, sex, and a period of membership. So over here, the first two columns, we look at age, and we want to look at the breakdown of, does age have an impact on whether or not a person is a promoter, a passive, or a detractor? We then looked at it on a breakdown well, we did male, female, then we did age, and then we looked at length of term. Now, theoretically, you would think on length of term, the longer a person stays, the more likely they are to be a promoter. And the results were pretty interesting. We found that females, by and large, tend to be stronger promoters than men. So we have about almost 60% of females were promoters versus almost 50% of promoters were male. And that, I think that speaks to certainly the fact that females tend to be more passionate about their brands. They tend to buy, shop and buy more carefully than men, and then they tend to be attracted to and really have a strong allegiance to the brands that they embrace. We also looked from an age standpoint, and we discovered that really the breakdowns are pretty similar across pretty much all age categories. We did see a little bump in that 35 to 44 category among promoters that goes up to a little over 56%. But for the most part, these are pretty well stable across all age categories. And then we looked at the length of their membership. And this is something that's very telling. About 60% of our respondents were promoters after 3 months. And then we saw those promoters drop to 56%, and then to 53%, and then to 49%, and then 48%. So a slow, steady decline of promoters over time. What does that tell us? Well, one thing it tells us, I think, is there's a freshness about joining a fitness facility and to starting this journey of health and well-being that really does impact the way people feel about their club. And additionally, too, their experience is limited in the club, so they're not necessarily looking beneath the surface very much in their early time with the club. And then as time goes on, I think a member becomes more scrutinous. They become more demanding of a facility, hopefully because they're seeing results from their program and their expectations increase. And as a result, their tolerance for dealing with issues tends to decrease a little bit. So, very important learning here, and that is, how do we take what is clearly about 60% promoters in a short-term membership period, and how do we extend that number of promoters across as they go from 9 to 12 to 24 months? A very important thing to consider. So the result there is members tend to be more loyal early on in their membership, and then they tend to be less loyal or more focused on really having no opinion or being a passive as time goes on as well. How do we keep them as loyal as possible throughout the entire member journey? So here's the question that we asked ourselves. As researchers, we come up with a question. We say, this is what we want to answer, and then we figure out how do we answer it. And so this one, does the Net Promoter Score predict the risk of canceling in the 12 months following the score? So you take a Net Promoter Score survey today, and let's say you rate us a 4. What does that say about the risk of your canceling over the next 12 months? And a lot of this research can serve really as a crystal ball, and it's kind of an exciting thing to embrace. But one of the things that we provide our customers on an ongoing basis is that ability through a lot of the software programs that we offer to really begin to do predictive analysis about their membership and help you identify what are the right types of members to recruit and to sell to for longer retention. What does the Net Promoter Score uh, do, and a better Net Promoter Score do in terms of increasing that member's term? And you hear us talking about retention a lot. And just as a matter of illustration, retention from our perspective, it's not necessarily just about sales minus cancellations. That's really attrition. But we focus on how do we impact the average life of a membership. So if the average length of membership in your facility is, say, 12 months, think about what the impact would be if you could increase the average length of membership to 13 months or 14 months. And do the simple math. Just take your monthly EFT and multiply that by the number of members that you have and see what sort of a direct impact that can have on your bottom line. So, does Net Promoter Score, which is a loyalty gauge, predict that risk of canceling in the 12 months following? And this graph, to me, says in a resounding fashion, yes. Now, in this case, we look at this y-axis as providing us really percentages of those folks, or the proportion of those folks that canceled. And then here we have the month since completing the Net Promoter Score. And for the sake of comparison, let's just look at 12 months. So let's say on day 0, I completed a Net Promoter Score. Where do I stand as a detractor 12 months out? How likely am I to cancel my membership 12 months out? And what we discovered, I think, is very, very telling and somewhat alarming as well. We discovered that about 35% of members who gave their facility a negative Net Promoter Score, a Net Promoter Score of 0 to 6, were gone within 12 months. That's an amazing and startling statistic. So these folks gave us a 0, gave us a 6, and were gone, 35% of them, one-third of them, within 12 months. By comparison, when we look at passives, and that's this red line here, we see a little less than 30% of our members left after 12 months, after giving us a score of 7 to 8. So these are the folks that don't necessarily have a specific opinion about your facility. And yet, even though they don't have an opinion, that means they don't have a negative opinion. And the impact, the difference between having that lack of opinion and a negative opinion, is clearly about a little over 5%. And so 5% of your membership can be impacted from being a detractor to being a fence sitter, a 7 or an 8. And then we have our gold dust, the promoters. These are the people that I think we'll all agree, if everyone in our facilities would provide us a 9 or a 10 in their loyalty rating for us. And this is something we do for our customers on a quarterly basis. So every 90 days, every active member gets a loyalty survey. And we look to use this to build the culture of loyalty around the facility, because we're constantly as a team working toward how do we improve our Net Promoter Score? How do we go from a 40 to a 50 to a 60 to a 70? And in this case here, promoters, after 12 months, we only saw an attrition rate of a little over 27%. So not a big difference between promoters and passives here, a major difference between promoters, passives, and then detractors. So the tendency of a detractor to leave more frequently after 12 months is stronger than the tendency of a promoter or passive to leave after 12 months. So that's a very telling statistic, because if you look at this gap represents real dollars. If I can keep this line straighter, more horizontal for the longer period of time, I'm generating more cash because I'm seeing fewer of my members cancel. And yet we have this gap here that is created and we feel has a direct effect by those people that gave us a detractor score. We also looked at, how does this association and the rate of canceling vary by sex, age group, and length of membership. Some of you are women's only facilities. Some of you deal with specific demographics, and others of you also sell membership terms. So it's important for us to begin to understand how does a member's loyalty impact the rate of cancellation on a specific member group. And here we have really two graphs. One tracks the females, and one tracks the males. And we have 3 points on the graphs: the detractors, the passives, and the promoters. And we discovered that the cancellation rate, and this is per 1,000 members per month. So these are actual numbers: 25 members, 30 members, 35 members, 40 members. But we discovered that the cancellation rate within 12 months, uh, every month per 1,000 members, was dramatically increased on both females and males as a result of them giving the facilities a detractor rating. A little bit more on males, a little bit less on females. When you look at the passives, we see that the cancellation rate drops in both categories. It drops less so with females, down to somewhere in the neighborhood of 28, 29 cancellations per 1,000. And then with males, we're seeing it at about 26, 27 cancellations per 1,000 for passives. These are people that don't have an opinion about your facility. Promoters, we see some very telling statistics here, and a real big difference, I think, between men and women. And that is with promoters, we see still a fairly high, and in fact, a rate of cancellation that's consistent with the rate of cancellation of passives. So, right around that 27, 28 members per 1,000. Uh, Men are very different. Men actually identify um, uh, themselves at about 21 to 22%. So promoters, uh, males of a facility, tend to stay longer, and so we're seeing fewer cancellations as a result of that. So that's good news for those of you who have very strong, passionate, and supportive men in your membership. They tend to attrit a lot less than other groups. So across all age groups, being a detractor is absolutely associated with a higher cancellation rate. Here's another one on a cancellation rate by uh, per 1,000 members per month and their age group. We see some very telling statistics too. And again, these are total numbers of members, and we'll look at 16 to 24. And what we see here is, from a detractor standpoint, those members that are between the ages of 16 to 24, if they are detractors, they cancel more frequently than passives and promoters. And then as we go further down that scale, we see that as they're passives, they tend to be right around 40% here, and then not much change as promoters. So this is a very discerning group, or maybe a group that doesn't have a lot of tolerance and is not willing to deal with issues as readily as other groups would be. So that's a very interesting group to deal with, especially when you have a large number of detractors in your facility. Um, 25 to 34 tends to be a little bit better. We see fewer members canceling as a result of a detractor net promoter score, somewhere around 45 per 1,000 members. And then it gets a little better with passives, and then it gets a little better yet with promoters. 35 to 44, we begin to see some very significant gains, just in terms of as people I think, get settled into a facility. Perhaps they are more tolerant of a facility. So, in contrast, we see detractors leaving a facility at about a rate of 32 to every 1,000 members in that 35 to 44 category, comparative to better than 50 um, in the um, in the 16 to 24 category. And then the category of 45 plus, we discovered that even fewer detractors were likely to leave, somewhere in the neighborhood of the mid 20s per thousand were likely to leave. And very interesting here, and we're still trying to get to the bottom of this one, but we're actually seeing that uh, there's actually a decrease, or actually an increase of attrition or cancellation rates between passives and promoters. Actually, more promoters we discovered canceled in the 45 plus age category. And one way to look at that might very well be that even though they're promoters, we might be dealing with retirement, we may be dealing with moving, folks that are snowbirds that are coming in and out of a facility, and of course, folks that unfortunately pass on. So there's a lot of things that might have an impact on why in this category passives or promoters are actually leaving the facility a little bit more frequently than passives. But very, very interesting information. And as I said, I'll send you each a slide deck, and if you have any observations or questions following our uh, webinar, I'm very happy to have a discussion with you by phone or by email or by Skype. Um, what we discovered is this: for members in their first 3 to 6 months, if they are classified as a passive rather than a detractor, their reduction, their cancellation rate is reduced. So, in a nutshell, within the first 3 to 6 months, if someone is passive about a facility versus being a detractor, they will cancel less. I think there's some very, very good behind the lines learning around this, and that is, I think we all agree that really the first few months of membership are the most critical months for a member of a fitness facility, not just in pursuit of their fitness program and a healthy lifestyle, but also in having them feel good about the club that they chose and feel like they're part of a community, part of a team, and certainly being embraced by the club. So that first 3 to 6 months is a very, very critical period of time. So we looked at that, and again, we're talking about total cancellations per 1,000 members per month, and we saw that really the longer a member stayed, the less likely they were to leave. Um, So 12 months to 24 months, we see the detractors are at about 35% cancellations, around 30% cancellations at 24 months. This 9-month one is a very interesting uh, calculation, but I think in a lot of respects too, it has something to do with the types of memberships that we sell. So if we're looking at clearly 50%, or I'm sorry, 50 members out of every 1,000 leave after 9 months because they're detractors. I think one of the things that we're learning here is that because so many of us sell an annual membership, these folks are getting close to the end of their term, and as a result, there's a tendency for those people that have a gripe or a beef or an issue with your facility. It's likely that they will stop attending the facility um, uh, and then cancel more quickly. And then the passives and the promoters tend to be fairly close at that 9-month level. We find that really that 24-month member tends to be the one that, regardless of their net promoter score result, passive, detractor, passive, or promoter, they're the ones that tend to stay longer and tend to cancel less. So, how much do detractors increase the risk of cancellation? In aggregate, we discovered that 58% are more likely to cancel within 12 months following the Net Promoter Score. So we're talking about detractors now, a 0 to a 6, a thumbs down. Uh, we have an average survival rate of 7 months. So a member stays in a facility 7 months following taking a Net Promoter Score and giving us a detractor rating. In comparison, people that give us a, a passive rating actually survive an additional 3 months following Net Promoter Score. So even there, you can see the difference between someone giving us a detractor and detractor score and someone giving us a promoter score. There's a 3 month difference in their length of membership. Take those months, multiply them by your monthly EFT. If you can move your average Net Promoter Score up from a detractor to even a passive, you can have an impact of a number of months, in this case, 3 months, on that membership. And if there's one thing that you take away from this webinar, please always remember every month equals money. So adding months to your membership lives is going to add dollars to your bottom line. And that's really what we're focusing on. I apologize for the big description here, the big diatribe, but we really see from a conclusion standpoint that being classified as a detractor significantly increases the risk of cancellation after they complete the Net Promoter Score. And that risk is increased even in the first month after filling out that Net Promoter Score. So I'm a member of your club, and I'm there for 25 or 26 days. You give me an NPS survey, and I have nothing good to say about your facility. I don't have a lot of patience, and as a result, you're going to see that I'm more likely to cancel even within the first month. So an NPS can be a great barometer for how well you're retaining your members. And then I want to bring your attention to this, and we're going to go dig a little deeper into this statistic in a moment. Overall, if all members were classified as either passes or promoters rather than detractors, so 7s, 8s, 9s, and 10s, as opposed to 0s to 6, then we saw that approximately 6% of those cancellations would have been avoided. And in fact, within 9 months, we discovered that about 10% of those cancellations were avoided. So by simply moving a member from a detractor rating to a passive rating, and then from a passive rating, hopefully to a promoter rating, can have a dramatic impact on your ability to decrease your cancellations and increase your member lives. So, as we said before, 6% of those cancellations would have been avoided. Do the math. That's in the course of this study. That's 6% of almost 3,400 memberships. We could have saved 204 souls as a result of moving their Net Promoter Score from a detractor to a passive or a promoter. There's real dollars buried in your membership. Net Promoter Score can help you mine those dollars by improving the member experience and by moving members to a more loyal and stable population. So, let's ask some questions. How do you create loyalty within your business? And I'm sure we all, as operators, believe we have a great system for creating loyalty in our businesses. But think about that. Where does loyalty lie? Who is responsible for managing loyalty? Is it the general manager? Is it the sales manager? Is it the fitness director? Is it the marketing manager? A lot of clubs are actually hiring people that are retention and loyalty experts. So think about who in your facility is responsibility for building that member loyalty. How do you thank your customers? How do you thank members who refer other members? How do you thank members for renewing their membership? How do you thank members just because they're members? Those little moments of delight that are completely unexpected. How do you reward them? What do you give them when they do something good for you? How do you pay them back for their good deeds, like a referral or like buying non-dues revenue items like personal training, small group training? How do you pay your members back for paying you more for their experience? And then ask yourself, how do you develop a consistent and effective delivery of customer experience that creates loyalty? It's not just about sending out a Net Promoter Score survey. It's about building a culture around member loyalty. And Net Promoter Score is a very, very critical part of that culture. But how do you build a culture of loyalty that is going to be enduring within your facility? And the goal here is, how do you grow promoters rather than detractors? How do you get people who, on any given day, would give your facility a 9 or a 10 versus a 0 to a 6? And those people that are likely to give you a 7 or an 8, they're fence sitters. They could go either way. They could become detractors very quickly, but they could also become promoters. How do we move them up the scale to really be promoters and being what we call raving fans of your business? So the key findings, just in a nutshell here: sex, age, and length of membership impacts the Net Promoter Score, with more promoters and fewer detractors in females than males. In males, the proportion of promoters increases with age, whereas females, the proportion of promoters declines. And then for each month of a membership after completing the Net Promoter Score, a higher proportion of members classified as detractors cancel compared to passives and promoters. This is a very, very key learning. If you embrace and make your members loyal from day one and really focus on that loyalty, you're going to see fewer cancellations, and you're going to see longer member lives. And then the lowest rate of cancellation each month after NPS is seen by members classified as promoters, although the difference is only slightly better than those classified as passives. So moving people from a 0 to a 6 to a 7 should be a goal. And I think it's a step goal to getting them to become promoters. So let's focus on getting those folks that give us a 0 to a 6 to give us a 7 or an 8, and then we can move them up to a 9 or a 10. Most notably, being classified as a detractor significantly increases the risk of cancellation, and the increased risk occurs even in the first month after Net Promoter Score. The reason detractors in that scale that I showed you earlier are red, it's because it's a real warning sign. It's a warning sign that that member is flashing to you every day, saying, "I'm not happy. What are you going to do to help me? What are you going to do to change my mind?" And if you don't catch those warning signs early, then you run the risk of those people canceling your facility. So we need to act upon their feedback to prevent this from happening. And you have to ask yourself, are you equipped well enough to do so? Is your business equipped to really focus on member loyalty and move member loyalty up a scale that's going to have a meaningful, positive financial effect on your business? So, next steps, and this is your challenge. Number one, review the research, and as I said, I will send you all a copy of these slides, and I'll also be happy to send you a copy of the member retention report that we produced for URSA around this topic. Great reading, really, really compelling stuff. Then really take a look at yourselves in your mirror and honestly assess your own methods. Are you actively speaking to your detractors? Do detractors have a voice in your facility, and is it a voice of empathy and a voice of positive action? Are you responding to your detractors? Are you using feedback to effectively make that difference and show them how valued that feedback is? I see comment boxes at clubs literally collect dust and cobwebs, because even though members might put a comment in that box, no one's reading them. Uh, you need a very active, very interactive system to gather feedback, to act upon it, and then to tell the member We hear you, and we're taking action. Are you preventing dropout? Are you preventing member attrition before it has occurred? Uh, in this day and age where we're all in highly competitive marketplaces, this is awfully critical. And your ability to anticipate, to diagnose a member that's really going to become terminal when it comes to being a member of your facility, can you prevent that before it's even occurred? If you can, if you can take those actions that are going to keep a member longer, you're going to generate more revenue from that member. It just stands to reason. So make a list, determine what actions you can take in order to improve member loyalty. Number one, to track it. And then how do you improve it? And how do you move your membership from 0 to 10? How do you move any members that are detractors up into that passive or promoter? Passives and promoters, they're the ones that we want, and we want promoters most of all. When we have promoters, we have a business that is going to really endure because you're going to retain more members. That takes pressure off of your sales efforts. You know, we run in a 30-day cycle in this business: sell, sell, sell. And yet the leaky bucket tends to leak out. And in fact, 50% of your members that join today will be gone in 12 months. That's a fact. How do we take those actions now to improve member loyalty so that 50% becomes 45% or 40%? And I'll be happy to talk to any of you to assist you with any stage of this. My name is Phil Bonomo at theretentionpeople.com. That's my direct number. I answer my own phone, and I'd be very, very happy to answer any questions that you might have now, if there are any. Otherwise, I'll be very happy to take your phone call or take an email. And if you shoot me an email, I will make sure that you get these slides and that you get the research report that we have prepared so that you can take a good look at it. All right, I've given you a lot of information today, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. If not, I'll just wait a second or two, and if there are no questions, I'll be happy to wrap things up. But I would really like this to be a dialogue. So think very strongly about the loyalty within your facility and how you can improve that, and certainly ask me for my opinion on any of the initiatives that you're taking. We do member loyalty and member retention better than anybody in the industry. So chances are anything that you're dealing with from a member loyalty standpoint, we've addressed. As I said, we're tracking 15 million member records. We've got 1,000 customers worldwide. So we've got a pretty good database of knowledge, opportunity, and solutions that we can apply to your business. So that being said, I want to thank you all for attending. It's been great to deliver this information to you. I know it's a lot, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. So without any further delay, I want to wish you a great afternoon, and hopefully we'll be in touch very, very soon. Take care now. Bye bye.